And we're live. My camera lens is turned around, so I can't see myself, but I can see the picture over here, so I assume it's working. So welcome to RockSim Live. My name is Tim Van Milligan. It's Friday, December 2024. The year's almost over. We got one episode left in the year. But we're here to talk about RockSim, RockSim Pro, and the Launch Visualizer. So if you have questions, I have the chat going right now, so put your questions in the chat, and I will try to answer them as best that I can. Let's see where we are. Let me go to the Apogee website. Let me change screens. There we go. So there is the Apogee website. And this scrolling carousel right here will have a link to the Launch Visualizer, and it should have a link to RockSim. And here's RockSim 11. So if you've never downloaded it before, you're watching for the first time, this is where you get it. There's a free 30-day trial period. It will work. Everything works in the trial except for the rocket doesn't come back down. It goes up, but it won't come back down. It stops at Apogee, and there's a reason that we do that, but it's for national security reasons. We don't want people using RockSim for trying to lob missiles into other places, because it could be used for that. Let's see, down here we have the free RockSim training every week, and we are doing that right now. If you click on the image, it will take you to our archives, and our archives have been updated. And thank you, Allison, for doing that. So the archives go through every episode. We're on episode 186 today. I thought we were on 187. But it goes through them all, and it gives you the topic and the timestamp in the YouTube video. So if you go click on the link to the YouTube video and go to the timestamp, you'll see that's where we talked about that particular subject. We talked about Micromax motors here on the 25th at 4516. So a good way if you want to learn something and you're not here at the RockSim Live and you didn't send in your question, because we've answered a ton of questions. So what you do is you do a find on this particular page. So on your keyboard, do Control F, which is a find, and it's only going to find on this particular page. On the Mac, it's Control C, and it will bring up a Finder window or a Finder screen right here, and we can type in something like decals, and you can say here how to add decals to your RockSim design, and we've talked about it 6 times, so let's see where the other one, how to add custom decals. How to add decals. We talk about this one a lot. It's a very common question, but that's okay. If you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it again. But if you're not watching live, this is where you would find that information. We also, on our webpage, if you click down here in the bottom corner, there's a little up arrow caret, and if you click on that, it takes you to the very top of the page. Come here to the how-to and guides, and come down here to software, click on that, and then you can see other information about RockSim that we have here. For example, here's the free trial. Here's where you can purchase RockSim. Here's the features, the frequently asked questions, what can you do with RockSim, system requirements, version history, video tutorials. So somebody on the rocketry forum had put a survey about what you would like to see in RockSim. And like one of the options was, I want to print it out user's manual. Well, we have not updated the user's manual since RockSim version 8 because it takes so much time to update that particular document, and the features change all the time, and computer systems change all the time. So it's just so hard to update it and how many people actually look at it. For example, if you go to the RockSim frequently asked questions, you click on that. On this page, there's a ton of information. This is kind of like if you were going through a user's manual, it's kind of like, how do you find what you're looking for? Because you don't even know what you're looking for. So how do you find what you're looking for? So that's why we have this RockSim Live presentation right now, is so that you can ask your questions and get specific answers to what your specific problem is that you're working on. You can also find information here, and you can, again, do the Command F, and you can type in user's manual, and nothing comes up. I swear there was a user's manual somewhere. Oh, here it is. Where's the help manual? So you can click here on there, and then it will take you to this page, which is really out of date. But if you scroll down, somewhere down here on this page, if you can't find it on your computer, here, download the old user's manual for version 8. And this is a PDF. And this is the last one that we created, and this was in 2003. So that's 11 years ago. But most of the stuff, some stuff like the cluster wizard is on page 55. Let me see what that would say on page 55. 53, 55. Okay, so here's the cluster. Well, this is not too out of date. The cluster wizard consists of a series of related screens. The next and the back button are used to move from one screen to the other. When you get to the final screen, you have the option of accepting the cluster pattern or closing the cluster wizard without making any changes. And it shows you the different cluster patterns, and then you have a variable ring pattern, which is pretty cool. But even that has changed. Got a lot more features now. So this is available, and this will give you the basics, although it's out of date. So if you want something better, go to the Apogee website, apogeerockets.com, go to how-to and guides, come back down here to software, and go over here to video tutorials. Now these are arranged by subject. Now, I would recommend, if you are brand spanking new to RockSim, you've never used it before, come to this page and just start going through the videos one by one. So the first one is getting started by opening an existing design and running a simulation. So that's kind of like, what do you do step by step on how to run your first simulation? Because we want you to run the simulation to see what the flight's going to look like, so that you can understand what RockSim can do for you. And then once you want to start designing your rocket, you just kind of work through some of the beginning ones first, and then down here, number 9 is where you would say, design me my first rocket. What are those steps? Step by step, what do you do? So that's good information here. Also, if you are in the ARC program, it used to be called TARC. Here is one of the ones that's very popular, how to set up a simulation where the nose cone comes down separate from the body tube, because that, for this year, that's one of the rules, is you got to come down in 2 parts. And how do you do that in RockSim? Well, we have a tutorial on how to do that. So that information is all there. I think that covers most of, like the introduction on how to use RockSim. If you have a specific question, now is your time to ask. Go ahead and put it in that chat, and I'll answer those questions. Make sure that there's questions coming in. We've got some viewers here. Oh, we got a lot of viewers in here right now. We have Carlos from Marietta, Georgia, Purple Haze, which says David from Michigan, He says it's snowy and cold there. No launches today. Carlos is in Marietta, Georgia. Stirk03 is from Pennsylvania. Okay, so we got 3 questions. First one comes from Carlos, and I'll answer his first. He says, Micromax launchers have several different launch rod lengths. Please use RockSim to analyze how long of a rod that a Micromax rocket needs to have a safe flight. All right, so let's go into RockSim. Now we use RockSim Pro, but they're the same. Okay, so, and it doesn't matter what size rocket it is. Could be Micromax, could be giant high power rocket. The way to find the launch rod length that you need is exactly the same. So it doesn't have to be Micromax. So what you'll do is you'll run a simulation. And if you have, so here's the screen, and the flight simulations, the previously run simulations are over here on the flight simulations tab. Now this is where we've run simulations and these are saved. If you haven't run a simulation before, let me open a new design. This is a 2-stage rocket. I'm just kind of looking for something generic. Katana Junior, that's a dual deployment. Peregrine Junior, Star Racer, Quest Sport. Okay, so save my changes? No. Okay, so I've opened up this rocket. It's the Quest Sport. If I go to the Flight Simulations tab, there's no simulations run right now. So basically, I've got to run one. So I don't know how long of a launch rod I need. So let's start by going up here to prepare for launch. That's that button right there. Clicked on that. And this shows the back of the rocket. And down here, it says choose an engine. So what I'm going to do is look in the database for engines, and this one shows a motor mount that's 24 millimeters in diameter. So right now I'm only showing engines that match that diameter. So they're all 24 millimeter motors. And I'll just choose an Estes D12 and pick an ejection delay. Let's choose a 7-second delay. And I don't even know if that's the right delay, which is okay. We'll figure that out if it's the right delay. It doesn't cost you anything to run the simulation, and it's going to be done like that. So don't worry about running the simulation. And then click OK. Flight events is when events happen during the flight. Ideally, it's staging and deployment events. So we only have a parachute in this rocket, and we're going to deploy the parachute at maximum ejection delay. So that means when D12-7, which is the motor I picked, 7 seconds after the motor burns out, it's going to fire the ejection charge. So that's what I'm telling RockSim is, yeah, let's use that. Use that deployment of the rocket motor to push the parachute out. And that's typical, but you can override it. And that's what this is if I wanted to override it, I would choose something else. If you click on it, you can see your options of choosing something else. So I'm just going to leave that alone. So here's my starting state. And right now I got a 96-inch launch rod, and I don't know if that's long enough or not. Typically, you know, on a small rocket, it's 36 inches. So I'm going to type in 36 because that's kind of typical. And so next is our launch guide from vertical. And this says my rocket is angled 21 degrees. You can't see my face over here. I better move it to the other side of the screen. There's a little red circle on top of my face. All right, so okay, so 21 degrees, angled 21. I want to launch straight up, so I'm going to change this to 0 degrees. And you'll see, hit the tab key, and you'll see that this is a kind of a slider, and I can choose any angle I want. This one right here is kind of like a compass, where north is up top, east is to the side, south is to the bottom, and west is to the left. Right now we're kind of aimed mostly to the south, But since the rocket's straight up, it doesn't really matter, right? So it doesn't. So launch conditions, this is my wind and everything. So I'm launching a launch site that's 6,593 feet above sea level. I don't know where that is. We'll figure that out in a minute. This is our wind. So right now I have a 4-mile-an-hour wind blowing across the field. And what I'm going to do is just going to click launch. And this is all you need to do to find out how long of a launch rod you need to do. You just need a simulation. So here's our simulation. Here's the results. So now what I'm looking for is velocity at launch guide departure. And if you don't see this, take your mouse, do a right click on that header column, and then choose organize columns. That's going to pop up. And this is going to show you everything that you can display in this column. So one of them is velocity at launch guide departure. And so right now mine is showing it. And if I uncheck it, it would unshow it. If I check it again, it shows it. And so it's right here. So we want to see that rocket speed be at least 30 miles an hour. So I got 32 miles an hour right now. So I'm okay. But if your rocket is not getting to 32 miles an hour, what you do is you just right click on the simulation. So not on the header row, but the row that you're interested in. Right click, or actually it's double click. So you double click on it, and it's going to bring up this detailed results. And in the detailed results, scroll down until you get to launch guide data. And then down here, it shows user specified minimum velocity, 29.9996, essentially 30 miles an hour. And this shows me that the minimum velocity is reached in 122 inches. So that can't be right. Something is wrong, because I'm hitting at 32 miles an hour at 36 inches. I wonder. Let me click OK here. I'm going to open RockSim, see if there's an issue with RockSim Pro. Waiting for it to come up. So here is RockSim. You can see it looks almost identical to RockSim Pro. I'm going to do file open. And I'm going to look for, was that Quest Sport? OPQ, Quest Sport. And it was a prepare for launch, choose engine, only show engines that match the motor mount diameter. I'm looking for the Estes D12-7. Click OK. Flight events, deploy maximum ejections. Starting state, we had 36-inch launch rod. Launch angle is straight up at 0. Launch conditions, this one has an 8-mile-an-hour wind. Let's back that down to 4. And launch. Okay, so this one says velocity at launch guide departure is 34 miles an hour, so we're actually a little faster. If I double click on it, make this bigger, launch guide data. Okay, so here is much better. That's more. So basically it tells me I reached my stable velocity in 30 inches. So that's what you're looking for, is, you know, how much rod do you need to get up to 30 miles an hour? And this is what it's telling me, 30.22 inches. So regardless of the size of the rocket, that's what we're going to use. I don't know why RockSim Pro is showing a different value. It was different. All right. Carlos says, RockSim is it best to weigh each painted part or just one mass object for the whole unengined thing? Okay, so basically he's got a rocket. You got the weight right here. And the question is, I'm going to paint the rocket and it's going to add more weight. What do you do? So basically what I would do, I would just use a single mass override. So here is, this is the weight of the rocket, completed, all built. That's what this tab does. Now, if you just wanted to add paint as a part, then you do it different. But typically, you'll find the mass of the rocket. Say I weighed it at 120. Let's see, let's pull the motor out. Because I want to get the weight without motor. So I just clicked on choose for prepare for launch, and then I'm going to clear and click OK. Okay, so now it tells me, see the motor's gone. And now it tells me my weight is 75.665 grams. So now let's say I actually painted it and weigh it. What's the weight? Let's say it's 85 grams. So I'm going to type in 85 right here. And then I need to know where it balances. So I'm going to take my rocket, stick it on my finger, and balance it. And where it balances, measured from the tip of the nose cone back, that's where I'm going to say that all the mass of the rocket is concentrated. So unpainted, our center of gravity is 10.11 inches. So what I would do is come over here and I'll say maybe I measure it and it's 11.5 inches. So that's my inches from the tip of the nose cone. And it's 85 grams. And then for RockSim to use it, just come up here to use the values shown below for all the simulations. So as soon as I check that box, now you got to hit the tab key because it didn't accept that 11.5 inches. So when you do that, now it's here. Or I wanted 10.5, not 11.5. Okay, so here's 10.5 inches from the tip of the nose cone. Also, what you'll see is right here, it says user specified. So if it says user specified, that means that you have gone to this tab right here and you've entered values. So if I uncheck this box right here, watch down here where it says user specified, that's going to change. So as soon as I uncheck it, it changes. So that's how I would do it, is just throw it in as a mass object. If you want more information about this, again, come to the Apogee website, go to the home page, scroll down here to the free training, and do a Control F, and we'll do mass override. And as soon as you start typing it, you'll see every time that we've talked about it. We've talked about this one a lot, 13 different times. Mass override, mass override, mass override. This is a very common question. Hopefully this answers it for everybody. This is probably the most asked question. And the answer is the same every time. It hasn't changed. Okay, Purple Haze says, can you review editing the materials table and how that affects part mass weight in a rocket design, please? Okay, so I'm back in RockSim. So how to edit the materials table. Okay, so if you come up here to the rocket menu at the very top, click on that, and come down here to edit database. And then if you go off to the side, there's different databases. Some of these are completed parts, and that's what these at the bottom are. We got body tubes, centering rings, bulkhead, engine blocks. Each of them is stored in its own database inside your computer. And if you want to edit one, you click on it. But we want to look at materials. So like say you're making a nose cone and you got a brand new material. Say it's some kind of exotic material that you bought somewhere. and you want to add that material to the database. So you go up here to materials, click on that, and it's going to bring up this chart. Let me make it bigger for you. Okay, so if we kind of look at it, we go across, we have the material name, its density, in what the units are, the density in the actual value, whether it's a fixed dimension or not. And if it is a fixed dimension, here's the units. And then we've got this column called rocketry use. That means, are you actually going to use it in your rockets? And if the value is a 1, it's going to be used. If it's not, we won't. And then you could say, what parts are you going to use it for? So some parts like rubber. You wouldn't use rubber for a fin. Why? Because that would be flexible and you don't want your fins to be flexible. So you wouldn't check off that I'm going to use it for fins. So let's see, do we have rubber in here? I'm just scrolling through the list looking, see if we got something called rubber. Vulcanized fiber. No, that's not rubber. Okay, so we're going to add a new material. Let's add rubber. Maybe we're going to make a rubber nose cone. Okay, so down here at the bottom, there's an add new button. So I'm going to click on that. And what it does is it creates a new line at the bottom of the screen. And let me move that up so we can see it. So I got to scroll down here to the very bottom. Here's a brand new line. And this is where we're going to enter our new data. So let's say rubber. Okay, so now what's the density of the rubber? I don't know. This is what you got to figure out when you add a new material. It's hard. I'm going to go to the internet, and I'm going to go to a search engine and say, what is the density of rubber? And look, we got rubber in grams per centimeters cubed, kilograms per meters cubed. We got silicone rubber, neoprene rubber. Let's say it's going to be silicone rubber. Okay, so I bring that up and okay. So silicone rubber is approximately 1.23 grams per cubic centimeter. So we're going to use that. So I'm going to come back here and it's asking me for a density and I say 1.23 and it was grams per cubic centimeter. So that's grams per centimeter squared. And then fixed dimension, since we've got a generic dimension, a fixed dimension is kind of like a shot cord. You know, you buy a length of cord, and what you would do is you'd weigh it. And so then I would say thickness, okay? And then the thickness of that material, what is it? Inches, millimeters, whatever. And then you would say, what's the value? But for us, we're using rubber. And for this, we're like making a rubber nose cone. So here I'm going to say my fixed dimension is none. And then it's going to ignore these two values here. So I'm just going to leave them blank. And then I want to come over here and check the box that says, yes, we are going to use this in our rocket. And then what are we going to use it for? If I move this over, I can use it for body tubes, fins, launch lugs. I know I want to use it for a nose cone. I don't want to use it for a parachute or a streamer. So those I'm going to leave blank. So if I do that, it won't show up in those databases. Okay, so now I'm going to click OK. And so now let's make our nose cone out of silicone rubber. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Components tab. And if I go to the nose cone, and if I come here to Material, now if I scroll down, I should see rubber. And so now I have a rubber nose cone, and we've already specified the density. RockSim's figuring out the volume. RockSim does that automatically. By doing that, what it does is it figures out the weight of that part. If it's a rubber part, it says my component mass is on. So whenever you see something like turned on, you got to come here to the mass override, and it's been checked, so I'm going to uncheck it. Okay, so right now, if I go back to the general tab, I'm at rubber, and it calculates the rubber nose cone is going to weigh 45.73 grams. If I change it back to balsa wood, you'll see my component mass has been reduced significantly because balsa has a lighter density than rubber. So that's how you add a material to the database. And I think this one was plastic before. So polystyrene, plastic. Now it's the 39 grams. It's hollow and it's got a wall thickness. So these dimensions here, or these parameters, specify, how RockSim is calculating the internal or the volume of that material. So you multiply volume times density, and it gives you weight. I'll click OK. I'm going to click cancel actually because I didn't really want to change the material. Save my changes, no. Now if I go to body tube, and if I click on the body tube and I go to the material for body tube, you'll notice that rubber is not listed here. Why? Because we didn't check it, that little checkbox to say use it for body tubes. So if I cancel out of here, and if I go back to the edit database, materials, and if I find my rubber, and hopefully it's still at the bottom, there it is, rubber. And if I go here to body tube, and I say edit, and I check that little box and say, I should say okay. Why is it not letting me choose it? Did it take it? Edit database. Very, very, very bottom. No, it didn't take it. Edit. I want to check that. I want this OK button to highlight. Why is it not working? I might have to delete it. Oh, done. That's interesting. I didn't realize it's got a done button and an OK button. So it's selected for body tubes, one, and then click OK. Now, if I go back here to my body tube, double click on it to edit, come to material, and there's our rubber. So that does work. So hopefully that answers that question. That was Purple Haze. That was David in Michigan. Starco3 says, in the launch visualizer, can you go over the altitude boxes? And one is usually grayed out. At times my rocket is up the launch rod, not at the bottom. Why? Okay, launch visualizer. Okay, so the launch visualizer is at rocksim.com. So rocksim.com, you go to the launch visualizer, and this is what it's loading right now. It'll be there in just a second. So it's kind of what the launch visualizer does is it allows you to run simulations. You can't design a rocket, but you can run the simulations. So I'm going to log in to my account. It's taking a little long to log in. The page isn't responding. Wait. Okay, so sign in. Okay, so I signed in, and he says can you go over the altitude boxes, and one is usually grayed out. Wonder which altitude box he's talking about. Launch site. Okay. This one right here. This one is grayed out. Can you see that on my screen? My face is covering things again. But right here, this says current altitude above sea level. See, it's grayed out. Because right now, because that is what the launch visualizer figures out. So if you'll notice, this number is 5394. This one up here says altitude at ground coordinates is at 5394. They're exactly the same. So our current rocket altitude and our altitude above the ground coordinates are the same. So here is a map of our launch site in Pueblo, Colorado. If I zoom in, these are our high power pads. These are our low power pads right here. So if I double click on it, that puts the new launch site right there. And if I hit the button here, we're going to get a new altitude. So I'm going to click on it, and you'll see that the altitude is slightly different, 2396. But our current altitude above sea level is also that same. Now I can change this value right here. Let's make it 10,000 feet. And I hit the tab key. And so our rocket launch pad, if you notice, see our red dot? Our red dot is actually now in the sky. So what I've done is I've taken my launch pad and I moved it up into the sky. Why would you do that? Say you're launching your rocket from a drone, or maybe from a hot air balloon, or a helium balloon, or from an aircraft. That's how you would do it. So now you're specifying a new altitude. So let's put a rocket motor in here. So that's the launch site. This is our starting state. And I'm going to leave that alone for right now. Put a motor in there. I'm going to choose an engine. This is very similar to RockSim. You choose an engine. We'll choose an Estes C6 5 7 5. Click OK. So we've loaded a C6 5 into the rocket. And if I launch it, just click which is right under my face. Click simulate, and it's going to run the simulation in the cloud. You don't have to download any software to do this. It's already in the cloud, ready to use. You just need to have an account, like I do. Okay, so now if I look at this launch rod, and if I look at it straight down, you'll see there's my launch pad, but I'm zooming in. I should be zooming out. So I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom out. Okay, so my rocket is actually right there where the tip of because I can see it moving. Because it's in space. And if I tilt the camera, let me find the rocket, click home. There's my rocket, it's in space. And let me zoom out a little bit here. And, whoops. Zoom out. Yeah, let me do it this way. See, my rocket is now hovering in space, and if I go high enough, you'll see that I'm in the blue sky. There we go. So I'm in space 10,000 feet above sea level. And my ground level is at 5396. So I'm about 5,000 plus feet above the ground when I launch this. And if I click launch, the rocket has took off. It's going up in the sky. And you can see here our altitude. It's still going up. And now it's starting to come down. And this is altitude above ground level. So but our ground level was at 5396. So eventually, when it comes back down, it's in the air 211 seconds. So I'm going to speed things up. First I'm going to go to the preferences here, and I want to see a trajectory path and a ground track, and click OK. And so now I got a green line showing my trajectory, and I'm going to zoom out. And it's getting smaller and smaller. Okay, so now you can see it started right there. It went up in the air, and now it's got to come down, but it's got a long way to go coming down. So to make it go faster, I'm going to grab the slider down here and slide it all the way to the end. Okay, so now you can see our ground path. So remember, the rocket was above this point, 5,000 plus feet, and it finally descended all the way back down to the ground, way over here. The distance from the launch pad was 5,184 feet. So it took a long time to come down because the wind was blowing it in that direction. So hopefully, Sturk03, that answers your question about why one of them is grayed out. Because you can't change the altitude above sea level. So again, that was here in the launch site. The current rocket altitude is 10,000 feet above sea level, and you change that right here. Our landing zone altitude didn't change, and that's 5396. What RockSim does is when you place the launch pad anywhere on the ground, let me redo it. Let's say I wanted to launch, trying to scroll over here. I want to launch right there. So you double click. When you do that, that's going to be where the pad is. And as soon as I do confirm launch site, watch the altitude at ground coordinates change. So now it's 5391. Didn't change much. And that's our current rocket altitude above sea level. And then if I change this, 6,000 feet, and that's coordinates above, altitude above sea level, not ground level, sea level. So you gotta remember that. And if you now say you were flying it from an airplane, and the airplane has some forward velocity, so we're at 6,000 feet above sea level, so roughly less than 1,000 feet above ground level, and we can give it a starting velocity. Say we're moving at 100 miles an hour. Type in that, and then you got to give it a direction. So since an airplane is going to be going, let's say our airplane is going straight and level, and our level flight is at 90 degrees, so 90 degrees level. And we're going to the north. So if we go back to our launch site, north is straight up. Let me zoom out a little. Come on. And it's going slow. Oh, now it's too fast. So north is up here at the top. So our rocket is already moving 100 miles an hour this way, and it's about 1,000 feet above the ground, or 700 feet above the ground. And if we launch this one, click to launch, and then simulate it. It's running the simulation. And he had one more question here. He says, at many times my rocket is up the launch rod, not at the bottom. Why? Okay, so if you look at this one, our rocket is not even on the launch rod. And the reason for that is there's a lot of geometry issues going on. So it's close. But sometimes we know issues where, like two-stage rockets, it looks at the bottommost I don't know if it's the bottommost engine location or the topmost. And that's where it puts the rocket from the rod or from the base of the blast deflector. So if we look at this rocket, let me zoom out. I lost the rocket. You got to find the rocket first. Now zoom out. Use these buttons over here under my face. And then use the scroll wheel. So right now the rocket is pointed to the north. Let me swing to the north around. So now north is going that way. And I can tilt it. So we're looking at the rocket. It's going that way. And when we launch, it's already moving at 100 miles an hour. And if we launch it, rocket takes off. And you'll notice that it hits the ground in 7 seconds. Boom! Right there. Oh, actually, the parachute came out. All right, so let's reorient this. Let's zoom out a little bit. I lost the rocket again. Zoom out. So we're approximately, 608 feet above the ground. And if we move the slider bar here, I want to get the trajectory. So you can see the rocket started here. It was already moving at 100 miles an hour. It was moving fast, but gravity really sucks. It sucked it down into the ground. The parachute did come out before the rocket hit the ground, but yeah. So that's kind of how you change orientation of the rocket. You can give it some initial speed, which is kind of cool. See where it's going to actually impact the ground. This is 1,700 feet away. That's kind of cool. Kelman says, I don't have RockSim. So get RockSim. There's a free demo. Wheelux World says, which one? There are like 6 or 7 designed in RockSim. Okay, we'll check them all out. We'll try. I'm reading through these comments here. Terry Wheelock's World is talking about his designs on his channel, which is cool. Check out his channel to see his designs. Mark Sell says, I saw you had unobtainium in your materials list. I can't find it in the Apogee web store. What gives? Well, it's unobtainable. And there's also Hollywoodium. You know, Hollywoodium. It's like the made-up wood that you can hit somebody with and they don't feel it. It says Starko3 says my rocket would be up the 8-foot launch rod even though I had all 3 altitudes entered and confirmed, but the rocket is halfway up the rod. Is that a problem? No, that's not a problem. It's just basically there's a lot of geometry that has to go on for us to figure out where to place the rocket on the pad. So if I go here, you can see my rocket. The launch rod or the launch lug is here. The rod is going up through the middle of the rocket. The simulation, when you get the results of the simulation, it assumes that the center of mass, when it actually runs the simulation, the center of the mass is actually at the Earth's surface. I believe that's true. And then it takes off. So you're only going to be off like a couple inches, a few inches, maybe a few feet. In the grand scheme of thing, when your rocket goes 1,000 feet up, it's It's nothing. Now, sometimes your rocket is underground when you launch it, and you can change that. So if I go back here, let's say, let's get a new launch site. Let's choose a different part of the country. Okay, so here's Colorado. Colorado's a big state, so here's the corners of Colorado right there. Let's choose, this is Illinois, and let's zoom in here. Let's just find a nice field to launch from. Okay, so there's lots of grass there in Illinois. And if I keep zooming in, okay, so that's some nice grass. Oh, that's a beautiful launch site right there. Nice green grass. I want to launch right there. So double click, it puts the launch site right there, confirm that launch site, and that's 581 feet above sea level. And if let's go back over here, let's launch straight up. And let's say, give it an initial velocity of 0, and then launch. So we still have the C65, and we simulate it. It's running the simulation right now. Well, actually, this one's pretty good. Sometimes the rocket will be underground, and that's because what RockSim, the launch visualizer, is doing, it has to have a database of the world, and it has to know where every point on the planet is in relationship to sea level. Now, you know that changes, right? Because, you know, you got the Earth, the crust of the Earth is moving, and it could be being forced up, you know, so how accurate is that database? And then, not every point on the Earth has, I don't know if you've seen those metal discs there on the ground at the corners of your property. Those are surveyor's marks. So those are actually, you know, if you find that number on that little plaque that's concreted into the ground, and then you go to the surveyor's office, you can find the exact altitude when that measurement was taken. And how many years ago was it taken, was the last time your property was surveyed. But so those are the corners, but we're not at a corner here. We're in the middle of the field. So we have got to extrapolate the altitude of that particular launch site from known geometric points on the planet. And so sometimes, you know, maybe there's a hill there, and, you know, the hill is in the middle, but the corners are lower than the top of the hill. But we're putting it on the top of the hill. But RockSim thinks, you know, the distance, you know, it extrapolated that altitude from that altitude, and in the middle is, you know, down here where the top of the hill is right here. And so that could cause your rocket to float upwards. Sometimes it could be under the Earth. So you'll see part of your rocket obscured. And if you don't want to see it obscured in the launch visualizer, if you go here to settings, and if I scroll down here to the bottom, I can adjust the ground elevation. I can move it up or down. And if you look at your rocket over here to the side, if I go this way, it's going to, come on, it won't slide on me. It keeps bringing up this stupid menu. Let me try that again. There we go. So now I am moving the ground down. And if I go the other way, I move the ground up. And you can see my rocket over here to the side is now partially obscured because I'm underground. Does that matter to the simulation? No, because RockSim always, it assumes you're flying through air, not flying through ground. And so the results of if it says your rocket went 200 feet in the up, it assumed that it went through air, not through dirt. Because obviously if you're going through dirt, the density of dirt is a lot higher, so it's not gonna work. My phone's ringing. I don't know who it is. I will send it to voicemail. All right. Terry Wheelock says, I thought we weren't supposed to launch rockets horizontally. And that's right. You can't launch rockets horizontally, but you can simulate them horizontally. There's nothing against that. And this is great for those people that want to do those what-if simulations. What if I launched my rocket? In fact, we could take our rocket, and let's say this is 500. Let's go 1,000 feet up. So I just added 1,000 feet, and then I go here to my starting state, and you'll notice I can actually rotate it straight down. So what if I launch my rocket from 1,000 feet going straight down? And we click launch, and it's going to run the simulation. This is going to be a very fast rocket. See, before it was 37 seconds. Now we're at 4 seconds. So 1,000 feet straight up, launching straight down. Look at the parachute's already open. Whack. So it hit the ground and then it restarts. Let me pause it here at the end. Okay, so we hit the ground right there from our starting state. So RockSim is really good for, these what-if situations. And so why wasn't this perfectly vertical? Well, we've got some wind. What was our wind? Let's see what our wind was. If I come over here to launch conditions, I have a steady wind, and it was set at 4.97 miles per hour. If I change that to meters per second, 2.23 meters per second. I don't know where it came up with that weird, how many feet per second it says, if there's an even number there. Anyway, so play around. Don't be afraid to play around in the simulations. It's a lot safer. Doesn't cost anything. Go ahead and do it. Terry Wheelock says, use Google GPS to find your location and height. Yeah, you can do that. It's in RockSim, in RockSim Pro, say you didn't have the launch visualizer, although everybody has it because it's on the web. You can go to Google Earth and see, pick out the coordinates of your launch site and the altitude above sea level. You can put that information. And RockSim Pro doesn't have the site selector that the launch visualizer has. So here, when we go to a launch, this is RockSim. Cancel. Okay, so here's RockSim Pro. If I go to prepare for launch, and it's looking for the launch condition. So here's my altitude, and this is altitude above sea level. And then it needs a latitude and a longitude. And right now, I have no way of getting that. So if you find your launch site, you have to plug those numbers in. What I use is the launch visualizer. I go back to the launch visualizer. And say I wanted to use that same launch site. So I come here to the launch site, and it tells me my latitude. So I'll do a copy, Command C. Come over here, do a paste. They did not paste. Sometimes it doesn't, it's ornery. Launch visualizer. $41. I'll put it off to the side. If I have to type it, I'll have to type it. Okay, it took it that time. And then a longitude. Copy. paste. And then we need an altitude. And so that was 581. Copy that and put that there, and put that also for the landing zone. I don't know where it's going to land, but I assume that the landing zone is going to be fairly close to my launch point. And I'm going to call this one Illinois a farmer's field. I'm going to save that to my database. So now it's saved into the database. And if I do I need a motor. Did I put a motor in this one? No. D12, 7. Okay. And we launch it. Oh, I want to hit flight profile, actually. And it's going to run, and it's going to bring up a launch visualizer in RockSim Pro, similar to what's on the web, except it's in RockSim Pro. So this allows you to design your rocket and simulate it with the launch visualizer, so you have both of them going on. Terry Wheelock says, "Ooh, baby, can we simulate launching a baby?" Well, if you can design it in RockSim, you can. I don't know how I would. There used to be, Estes had a kit called the Spaceman. Okay, so it's loading the maps. That's why the color is changing back here. Okay, so you're wondering, why is this one brown when the other one was green? And the answer is because they're different map servers. This one is from Google, and the other one is from a company. The other one, I'll bring it back over here. This one here is from OpenStreetMaps. So you got to kind of look for other landmarks. So we got trees. We got a house over here. So if I zoom out, there's my trees, and there's the house over here. So it's the same field. It's just here it was nice and green. Here it's brown. And actually over on this side it is green, because that is because of the way the maps were taken. You know, as the satellite goes overhead, it does strips. And sometimes it takes the strip during the summer, and sometimes it takes the strip while it's looking at it during the winter. And it's obviously seasonal differences, so you'll get these stripes. We use Google Maps in RockSim Pro, and we use these other maps here in the Launch Visualizer because there's some restrictions from Google. These maps aren't quite as good as the ones from Google. So you get higher resolution here because, you know, here you can see the furrows of the ground. But that's about as good as I can get. There's the rocket sitting on the pad. But if I go down here to a road, there's the trees, there's the road. These aren't actually not very good, decent maps either. Sometimes you can see the stripe in the middle of the road. Maybe that's a dirt road. It's in the country. And we launched the rocket. The rocket's taking off. Took off from right there. It's going up. This is a D motor, so this was going to go pretty high. At 1,300 feet. And it hit Apogee, and it's now starting to come down. And it's going to be 80 seconds coming down, so we'll just bring it all the way back down to the ground. All right, so that was that simulation in the Launch Visualizer. You can see that it's in 3D. All right. There's a comment going on is why would you want to launch a baby? And Wheelax World says they launched Superman when he was a baby. Okay. That works for me. It's after 3 o'clock, so I think we're done for the day. What did we talk about today? We talked about mass objects. We talked about the launch rod length. We talked about the materials databases. We talked about the launch visualizer and how to orient the rocket in the launch visualizer, how to launch rockets horizontally. There's a lot of cool things this time around. Thank you all for the great questions. It will be Christmas on Wednesday, and we will not be here on Wednesday, but we will be here the rest of the week. So that means we will be back again next Friday. So Wednesday is 25th, 26th, 27th of December. So have a Merry Christmas, everyone. And I won't say we'll see you next year, but we will see you on Friday. So I'm going to give you a countdown and a launch. And we're actually going to launch tomorrow. We're supposed to have beautiful weather here in Colorado. I'm going to be launching the Invicta. It's just kind of like, I don't know how many times I've launched that rocket. Almost as many as the Nike Hercules. But that's going to be the next kit that we're going to release. So I just want to launch it because it's fun. 2 stages are fun. So happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. And we'll see you next week. So in 5,